Good evening. This is Jacob Hornberger, and this is the Jacob Hornberger Show. Nice to be with you this evening. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation and a Libertarian Educational Foundation. And I got to tell you that the Washington Post sometimes really has a good sense of humor. I want to share with you a point that they made in their Saturday issue. This is great. This is absolutely great. They're taking Mitt Romney to task for something that's going to absolutely just cause you to burst out laughing. It is so funny that it turns out that Romney, because Romney's having a difficult time in his campaign right now, it dredged up an old 14-year-old video of President Obama. And he's now starting, to bring people's attention to this 14-year-old video. And what the video says is that in there, President Obama says, I know there are some who believe, he says, I think the trick is figuring out how do we structure government systems that pool resources and hence facilitate some redistribution? Because I actually believe in redistribution, at least at a certain level, to make sure that everybody's got a shot. Okay? So here's Obama. I mean, no big surprise there. He's a redistributionist. You see, he believes in government seizing the wealth of some people in order to give that wealth to other people. But, of course, deducting the handling costs of the government, which are substantial, as we all know. Now, Mitt Romney dredges up this video and says, boy, you see, this is proof that President Obama's a socialist. And these are his exact words. I know there are some who believe that if you simply take from some and give to others, then we'll all be better off. It's known as redistribution. It's never been a characteristic of America, Mr. Romney said. What? It's never been a characteristic of America? What planet is this guy on? And fortunately, the Washington Post skewers him. But they skewer him in a way that we libertarians skewer conservatives. Because you see, we always hear this from conservatives, right? Their favorite mantra is free enterprise, private property, and limited government. Go to any conservative foundation website, and I will guarantee you that that little mantra is on their website. It's on their stationery. They can't give a speech without saying, I'm a believer in free enterprise, private property, and limited government. Now, sometimes they'll go further and they'll say, I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and America, its capitalist system is really great, and I'm proud to be a capitalist. You see, you hear all this from conservatives. And we libertarians point out this is ridiculous. I mean, all your little mantras mean nothing in terms of what you believe. Your mantras contradict what you believe. So they're accustomed to hearing this from us libertarians, which is one of the reasons why they do their best to lock us out of the political process and the ideological debates, the mainstream media, and so forth. I mean, thank goodness for the internet, where libertarians have a very, very dominant presence. But you see, conservatives have always wanted to keep libertarians silenced in order to create this pretense for their children, their wives, their husbands, their families, their friends, and their opponents, and of course the mainstream press. There's big ideological debate, and you'll see some of it, in the upcoming debates, presidential debates. About the mainstream media will say, "Boy, we saw two different philosophies last night," and so forth. And of course, we libertarians point out this is ridiculous. Well, here you have the Washington Post. That's why it's so humorous, pointing out what we libertarians point out. They say, the campaign apparently thinks that voters will find redistribution a scary word. But does Mr. Romney really disagree with the belief that part of government's role, in Mr. Obama's words, is to help make sure that everybody's got a shot? To govern is to redistribute. Benefits from government spending flow in different amounts to different individuals in different states. Unless Mr. Romney envisions government stripped down to the role of providing for the national defense and building a road or two, and it is clear that he doesn't, it's hard to imagine a world in which government does not play some redistributionist role. More to the point, Mr. Romney has himself endorsed redistribution. Okay, here's where they're really sticking the knife in. He does not propose abolishing Medicaid, Pell Grants for college affordability, or food stamps, all ways in which government redistributes benefits to those less well off. Indeed, Mr. Romney has proposed more redistribution. Social Security is a redistribution program. Lower income retirees have a larger share of their income replaced than do better off seniors. That Mr. Romney wants to make more redistributionist by slowing the growth in benefits for those with higher incomes. On Medicare, likewise, Mr. Romney is explicitly redistributionist. I mean, there you have, this mainstream newspaper saying, who you calling a socialist, dude? Look at what you believe in. You believe in Medicare. You believe in Medicaid. You believe in education grants for students. I mean, if you go back and see old, videos of this show, it's what I've been saying I've been saying it for 22 years. That this is what conservatives stand for. They stand for socialism, but wrapped in a free enterprise mantra. And they go out and they give their little talks at their little conferences and seminars and stuff where they, by the way, hate to have libertarians present because we present the real alternative. Because we don't believe in Medicare. We don't believe in Social Security. We don't believe in Medicaid. We don't even believe in government-owned roads. I mean, this nonsense of the interstate highway system, this grandiose socialist program, which, by the way, got inspired from National Socialist Germany. Yeah, surprise, surprise. So here they are, though, skewering Romney, and rightfully so, because Romney does believe in these programs. He believes in the welfare state. I mean, let's face it. This is a battle between statists. It's a battle within the statist community. All right? And so you've got one statist on one side and you got another statist on the other side, or if you want to call it redistributionist versus redistributionist or socialist versus socialist. Doesn't matter what label you want to put on it. Welfare status, warfare status. Now, when they talk about military defense, they're not talking about defending the country from invasion. That's not what the Washington Post is skewering him about. They're talking about this giant, vast military-industrial complex, the CIA, the national security state, the vast empire overseas, what they euphemistically call national defense, the Department of Defense. Troops in more than 130 countries, invasions, occupations, regime change operations, aid to dictatorships, aid to democracies, interference with other people's way of life, kidnappings, renditions, torture, war on terrorism. To them, that's all national defense. You got to defend the nation from the terrorists and so forth, which, of course, the government's policies are producing. So you see, this is what's really a shame about this political season, is that you're not going to get a real choice. You're not going to get a real debate here. It's a debate between statists, between socialists, between warfare statists, welfare statists. All they're going to be arguing about is who's the better statist, who's better able to produce jobs. The big job creator in chief. I'm running for job creator in chief. I'm a businessman, Romney will say, and Obama will say, well, I've started the job, and it's clear that I can get these jobs created better than he can. But you see, it's all coming out of the same little paradigm, the same mindset. And it's really a shame because, this could be a really fascinating time. For example, what do liberals use as one of their primary justifications for their beloved welfare state? That they love the poor, right? That's just their standard justification. Well, we love the poor. And if you object to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, education grants, or whatever, that's the standard thing they'll hit you with. Oh, you libertarians are heartless. You hate the poor. You're poor haters. You see, and then once they say that you're a poor hater, man, that's the end of the story. They just walk away because it's so clear that you hate the poor, and that's what the charge they don't level that charge. Well, they level the charge at conservatives, but it doesn't really mean much because the conservatives they buy into all the programs, the food stamps, the public housing, the whole shebang, the education grants, the whole kit and caboodle. But where they really level the charge is at libertarians, because libertarians, we want to get rid of all this junk, and it is junk. We want to ditch Social Security immediately, just repeal it. And Medicare and Medicaid be the greatest thing you could ever have in this country. Abolish the income tax immediately. And all the taxes that pay for Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and the Pell Grants and all the roads and all that nonsense. Just get rid of it. Well, what do they say? The liberals, their favorite argument is, you hate the poor. You're a poor hater, libertarians. Boy, okay, you hate the poor, and we're not even going to listen to you. We're going to shut you out of the process. Well, the problem with their little philosophy is that despite the fact that they've locked us out of the process or tried their best, you can see that multitudes of people are starting to learn about libertarianism. They're attracted to libertarianism. They're seeing that this really libertarianism was the founding principle of our nation. If you exclude the horrible exceptions, slavery, tariffs, a lot of minor exceptions, grants to the railroads and so forth, libertarianism really was the founding philosophy of the United States. And the statists prevailed, though. The statists beat out the libertarians. The battle started in the late 1800s, came up into the early 1900s, where the progressives were saying, we need government to regulate the capitalist system and the exploitation and the sweatshops, and we need government to establish empire around the world. And that was what the Spanish-American War was about. And then, of course, the liberals got us into World War I, and they got us into World War II, and they extended the empire after that, and the national security state. Well, that's their philosophy. And whenever we object to it, y'all are poor haters, y'all are poor haters. Well, the real shame of this is that, Romney, since Romney buys into this, you're not going to see anybody take these liberals to task over that. Wouldn't that be a great thing to take right to their faces, these liberals? Is that, what are you talking about? Hate the poor. For one, what are you people doing with immigrants? Illegal aliens. Yeah, you've got a guy up there who's the mass deporter in chief. He takes pride in the fact that he's deported all these poor people. And these are the poorest people in the world. Well, some of the poorest people. They got nothing. They come here to work. They come here to better their lives. And yeah, I know the standard response of conservatives. No, Jacob, they come to get on welfare. Well, you know that there's never, as far as I know, there's never been an immigration bust at a welfare office. Never. They're always at private businesses, private companies, where the illegal aliens are working. And why are they being hired by these American employers? Because they work hard. They want to improve their lives. They want to improve their families. They send money back to their families. And liberals have been longtime supporters of the war on immigrants. Deport these people, raid businesses, total violations of freedom of travel and freedom of migration and freedom of trade and freedom of association and freedom of contract. But you're not going to have a conservative say that to the liberals. You're not going to be able to say, if you love the poor so much, how come you're treating these illegal aliens like that? You just skewer them. Show what hypocrites they are. As big a hypocrites as conservatives that say, we believe in free enterprise and private property and we oppose redistribution, but we support Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, Pell Grants for students, and on and on and on. But you're not going to have Romney do that. You're not going to have the conservatives do that, because they're even bigger supporters of the war on immigrants than liberals are. But, of course, they don't profess to love the poor. They love the rich, but they don't profess to love the poor. It's the liberals who profess to love the poor. And so that's how they justify their welfare state. And then also, it's a shame there's not going to be a battle over the welfare state itself. Because you see, the assumption that the liberals have always had, and where they have the high ground against the conservatives, in these debates and discussions, is that they claim that the welfare state helps the poor. And the reason that they're on higher ground than conservatives is because conservatives believe in the welfare state too. So what are they going to say when the liberal says, well, the welfare state helps the poor? And what's a conservative going to say? No, it doesn't. And they say, well, if it doesn't, then why do you support it? And then, of course, the conservatives trapped again because the conservative supports it. I mean, I saw Mitt Romney's picture on the New York Times today, front page. He's speaking in Florida where there's a lot of seniors that vote, and he's got a big, little billboard on his podium that says, defend Medicare or something like that, or I'll support Medicare to the end, or ridiculous. Well, the fact is that the welfare state does hurt the poor. Because when you look at the massive amount of taxation that is taken out of the private sector to support the giant welfare state, which is, the parasitic section, you're depriving the poor of job opportunities from all that private capital that's taken away from the private businesses. I mean, all that capital that is confiscated by the IRS would be going into production, into investment, into better tools, better equipment, better machinery that makes workers more productive. And it's only through increased productivity that you can get higher wages. I mean, if the workers are producing $1,000 worth of wheat, and they don't produce any more than that, then there's no way they can get pay increases. I mean, even if they got the whole $1,000, they ain't going to get more than $1,000 because that's all they're producing. The only way they can get wage increases is productivity going from $1,000 worth of wheat, next year $2,000 worth of wheat, next year $5,000 worth of wheat, and then you've got more money in the private sector available to pay those higher wages, and they come about through competition. That one company's making a lot of money, he starts bidding players. I'm thinking baseball, where you start bidding players away. Same thing though in the private companies, in the farm industry, they're bidding workers away when they're making more money. But it has to be done through real capital. And this is where the liberals and the conservatives fail again with their little stimulus packages and so forth. You know how they favor the Federal Reserve right now, going out and printing the money to stimulate the economy. Let's get the economy going. All that does is distort things. It's not producing real wealth. They're confiscating that wealth. With all this massive welfare state taxation, then the inflation not only confiscates wealth, especially from people on fixed incomes, because you got prices now soaring in response to the debased dollar. I mean, that's why the dollar is worth about 5% of what it was when the Federal Reserve came into existence, because they've done decade after decade what they're doing now. They're accommodating the out-of-control spending and debt by printing the money. And not only does it confiscate wealth secretly and fraudulently and surreptitiously, but equally important, it sends distorted signals to the investment community, to the business community. You see, they think, oh, we're getting these signals that there's prosperity here. And so they, go out and borrow money, they invest, they build the businesses up, but it was fake prosperity. And so they've gone out and borrowed money in response to this. All of a sudden the bubble burst. The real wealth wasn't there. It was confiscated away. It was printed away through the printed money. And all of a sudden you've got bankruptcies and shakeouts and so forth. And that's their system. And they say this helps the poor. Well, how does it help the poor? I mean, for one thing, in an unhampered market economy, like the libertarians favor, where there's no income tax, no Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, regulations, and so forth, the poor have a chance to get wealthy. I mean, that was why the poor were flooding American shores from, let's say, 1870 to 1900. They were coming from all over the world. There was no welfare, there was no food stamps, there was no Social Security, no welfare state, no income tax, no Federal Reserve, no bailouts. And the poor were flooding into America. Why? Because they had a chance to get wealthy. And even those that didn't get wealthy, their standard of living was rising. I mean, if you look at real wages from 1870 to 1900, they were soaring. People just taking home on a paycheck, it would buy, within a 20-year period of time, twice, double what it had bought 20 years before. I mean, the standard of living was soaring. They had sound money, gold and silver coins instead of this cheap and debased paper money that they keep flooding with printed money. They had no income tax. I mean, this is the way you help the poor. Argentina copies the system, in the early 1900s. they copy this system, and Buenos Aires ends up being the second largest port on the eastern seaboard, second only to New York. Standard of living was soaring, low taxes, open borders. They had open immigration, just like the United States did. Immigrants were flooding into Argentina from Germany, Italy, and so forth. Standard of living was soaring for people. And then, of course, they have I forget Perón comes in, copies the socialist policies of Franklin Roosevelt. So you got both countries moving off in the same direction. America starts it, and the statists prevail. They adopt this welfare state, income tax, Federal Reserve, and who have been the biggest people, the biggest victims of the welfare state? The poor. The poor, they got them this is what Romney's talking about when he's talking about people dependent on the welfare state. I mean, there's people that are dependent on the dole, and liberals say, but that helps them when they're dependent, when they're getting food stamps and public housing. Bull. That destroys a person's life. There's nothing worse than to be dependent on the dole. Nothing. I mean, it destroys a person's spirit. It destroys his sense of self-worth, his self-esteem. The best thing you can do is have an environment in which people are managing for themselves. And for those that cannot, those that are truly sick and disabled and people in cancer wards or whatever, that's what families are for. That's what voluntary charity is about. That's what honoring thy mother and father is all about. It's not going through the state to do that. That doesn't have, do these Christians that believe in this stuff really think that God favors coercion when it comes to charity? On the contrary, he opposes it, because really what it is just stealing. It's saying, well, I don't want to be good with my own money, so I'm going to be good with everyone else's money. Or I'm going to be good with everybody with my money, but I'm going to make sure that everybody gives too, and I'm going to force them to on pain of fine and imprisonment if they refuse. That's not Christian. That's not religion. True Christian, true religion, the Judeo-Christian ethic is you give of yourself. And for those that are truly needy and their families have turned their backs or they don't have families, and that's what charity's all about. That's what these foundations are all about. And that's what America is all about. That's what Romney's hinting at, but he can't come out and really say that he believes it because of what the Washington Post says. And who are the people that benefit from this? And this is what liberals, they don't want to face the reality. They want to play their little game about how the poor benefit from the welfare state. But I'll tell you who benefits. It's the counties right here in the around Washington, D.C. Did you see that article where the counties around Washington, D.C. are in the top 10 most wealthiest counties in the country? I mean, thank you, America. We're talking about Fairfax County, Loudoun County, Maryland. It says, this article from the New York Times by Ross Douthat, I think that's probably the way you pronounce it. It says that you'll find concentration of wealth greater than in the richest counties around New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco. Isn't that something? I mean, all this wealth around here, you ought to see, they're building like crazy. You think there's a housing slump around the country? They're building like crazy right here in my neighborhood in Loudoun County. It's amazing. And you know what it is? It's the welfare warfare state. I mean, thank you, America, for supporting the welfare state, for supporting the warfare state. All your tax monies are coming right here to Washington, D.C. You got contractors, subcontractors, businesses out the gazoo. I mean, they're making a killing. All these people that are on the government dole. Now, obviously the Future of Freedom Foundation, we're not involved in that. We don't take government grants and so forth. But that's where the money is, in the government grants, the welfare state grants, the national security grants, the warfare grants. They're making a killing, and it's at your expense, and it's at the expense of poor people. Because even though they may not pay taxes, income taxes, the fact is that their standard of living is lowered by the fact that the government's confiscating this massive amount of wealth from the private sector. Because if all that money stayed in the private sector, you're talking about new businesses, expanded existing businesses, massive investment in capital, job opportunities. But no, they confiscate the wealth and they say, okay, you can join the military. We got plenty of money over here. We can pay you a nice salary. You may come back later on without a leg or without an arm or in a wheelchair or you're half your brain blown out, but hey, VA will take care of you. Don't worry about it. Um, or they'll say, hey, we'll put you on the dole. And then you'll vote for us because you'll be so scared of losing the dole. And hey, we'll put your children on the dole too. We'll make this a multi-generational thing. This is a sick system. It's a junky system. And unfortunately, you're not going to hear any of this. And it doesn't matter. Okay? It doesn't matter that Romney and Obama are both statists and they're going to be battling over who's the better statist and who's the more efficient statist and who's going to make Medicare work and Medicaid work and Social Security work and Pell Grants and the warfare state and who's going to be a better bomber and a torturer and who's going to be able to run Guantanamo better. And that's all the whole fight's going to be about. Who's a better statist? But we libertarians, we got to just keep battling with our philosophy of individual freedom, free markets. In other words, the mantra that Romney uses, free markets, private property, limited government, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, because more and more people are waking up. The scales are dropping, just like it did with us libertarians, either a long time ago, as in my case, just recently, maybe in your case, or maybe just a few years ago. It doesn't matter. The fact is that people are breaking through and they're facing reality and they're saying, the welfare state is not what this country was all about when it got founded. The warfare state, the military empire, the CIA, the Pentagon, the vast troops overseas, the invasions, the occupations, the torture, that's not what America was supposed to be all about. It's not what America was about when she was founded. And you can look at George Washington's farewell address. You know that you can see the antipathy that our ancestors had towards standing armies. That's what America's all about, is what libertarians stand for today, with the exception of the big ones, slavery and terrorism and so forth. But we've got to keep fighting. Now, another area here that you're not going to hear anything about is the civil liberties. Obama went over to the Republicans as soon as he got elected. He was a big civil liberties advocate when he was running for office 4 years ago. Yeah, big, stout, advocate of civil liberties. He was talking like, somewhat like a libertarian. And talking like some liberals that are strong on civil liberties, Glenn Greenwald, the ACLU, and so forth. Obama was saying, I'm going to close Guantanamo. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace to America's heritage of civil liberties, the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th Amendments. And I mean, they behave like totalitarian dictatorships over there. Indefinite detention without trial. They got people in jail for 10, 11 years. And they say they're going to try them. I mean, that's what they're there for. They say that we're going to try them. We have these hearings and stuff. They haven't received a trial. They're not going to get trial by jury. They're going to get trial by kangaroo tribunal. They haven't had a trial, 10, 11 years. I don't give a hoot about the right to speedy trial and the right to a grand jury indictment, right to trial by jury, right to confront witnesses. But we do at the Future of Freedom Foundation. We're libertarians. And by the way, that's why we're having our College Civil Liberties Tour. If you're not familiar with it, please go to our website at fff.org, to our email update, scroll down to upcoming events. We're really psyched about this thing. This is really part 2. We did part 1 last winter. We went to Columbia University, Middle Tennessee State University, Purdue University, Indiana University, Ohio State, and it was just fantastic. We had a liberal, Glenn Greenwald, who now blogs. He went from Salon over to the Guardian newspaper. He was named by Forbes magazine one of the top 10 or 25 most influential liberals in the country. We've got Bruce Fine, a conservative. He was with the Reagan Justice Department. Both these guys are the most eloquent, passionate defenders of civil liberties you'll ever find. You can go and see the talks on our website. And I'll be the libertarian, and we're going to be hitting this thing at different angles. Glenn will be hitting it from a liberal perspective. Bruce Fine will be doing it from a conservative perspective. I'll be doing it from a libertarian perspective. We got Jack Hunter who writes for American Conservative Magazine, works for the Young Americans for Liberty, who, by the way, is co-sponsoring this, putting it together on these college campuses. We're going out to the University of Seattle, University of California, Davis, University of California, San Diego, University of Arizona, Tucson, and wrapping it up at University of Colorado, Boulder. I mean, we got ourselves a lineup. I mean, and we got really good videographer going with us to make sure that you get these things live streamed if you can't make it. If you can make it, Would love to have you join us. You got friends in these areas, email them, tell them about the program. Details are again are on our fff.org website. I'd love to have you join us. It's open to the public. It'll be predominantly students because it's on these college campuses. But what we're doing is we're bringing people's attention to the importance of civil liberties. I mean, this is something that conservatives are just a disaster, absolute disaster. And of course, most of the liberals now, because they've thrown in the towel and seal their lips now that their man's in office, and they'll just nod their head when Obama infringes on civil liberties in the same way the conservatives do. But we're battling, and the reason we're battling is because ideas matter. They can influence people. They can move people in a libertarian direction. And look at all the people. You can see it in the campaign earlier. All the libertarians that are self-described libertarians that realize we've got to talk about sound money, getting rid of the Fed. We got to talk about the whole disaster of the welfare state, which is something conservatives used to talk about. Romney's hinting at it. And then the warfare state and the importance of civil liberties and so forth. That's what we're doing. That's why libertarianism and libertarians are really the only hope for America there is. There is no hope with these statists. And so we've got to keep raising people's vision to this libertarian paradigm. And ultimately, we reach a critical mass that then shifts, the same way the statists did, to achieve statism in America. They shifted America. We can shift America over to libertarianism. That's the show. Thanks for listening in. See you next week.